we talked about the ideal client. We talked a little bit about something that you necessarily wouldn't want, but what would you consider your nightmare client? Have you had any?
Yeah, we've
Yes,
we've had some nightmares, and it usually starts with them coming
with pre-bought plans.
With pre-bought plans.
As we just talked about.
We had one client one time. They came in and they had drawn their house plan in the game Sims, the computer game Sims.
That's interesting.
People said, well, if you're good at math, you could be an architect too, but like this day and age, you don't really use a lot of math.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Like,
they're
hey,
like,
you must really be good at math. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah,
exactly. But the engineers are great.
Yeah, exactly. The ability to read like body language and is something that's pretty important. I mean, a lot of times, it's husband and wife, or and we are having to like. I don't know.
Yeah,
counsel a little
referee.
bit. Referee a little bit. And so
personal foul.
One is saying one thing, one's saying another thing, and we have to be the ones to kind of figure out what's the best solution.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Design Discussions with Nadine. I'm Nadine, and today I'm here with Garrett and Bryson of ARC3. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having
Very
us.
talented architects, and we're going to talk all things architecture today, some interesting topics. So the first question I want to ask you guys is a general question. Of course, everybody wants to know, how did you get into architecture to begin with? Was it something that you were passionate about when you were young, or is it something that you kind of just fell into?
So for me personally, my dad was a general contractor in Southeast Texas, and he would build homes. And I was always on the job sites as like the cleanup crew kid, and he would have me doing different things. And I just enjoyed being on the job sites. And he took me one time, the first time I'll never forget, going to the Astrodome to watch the Astros play, and just being inside that stadium and feeling the enormity of the space. It just blew me away. And then as I got older, got into high school, you take those aptitude tests that kind of tell you what your skill set is. And everyone that I took always came back architecture, which was really kind of straightforward. And I didn't question it a lot. I would color code my skills or eat my waffles like one square at a time. And so I was very kind of regimented, but I also liked drawing and that sort of thing. So that was the major that I chose when I came out of high school. And so that's kind of how I got into it.
So the testing said, this is what you should do? And
I didn't really question it too much. I don't know. Maybe I should have explored different things, but I just went with that and got into architecture school, realized I really knew nothing about architecture and what it was all about. I knew more of kind of the construction side, but I did have an artistic side to myself as well. I liked drawing and that sort of thing. So architecture school was definitely a learning curve, but once I got into it, I really enjoyed the design process. And so I really enjoyed. And then I got to travel a little bit in college. Bryce and I actually were both on a study abroad trip together in Italy, and being over there and seeing some of those old ancient buildings, but also world-class new buildings, it was really, really a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Yeah. For me, I just, as a kid, always loved Legos and building things, and was very artistic, always took art classes. And even in college, I took art classes. And it wasn't until I did community college at first and wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. But, growing up, my mom was always like, you should do architecture. You always loved Legos and this and that. And I was like, I guess. But it wasn't until I went to U of H and I took an intro to architecture class. And I was like, you know what? I think this is what I want to do. And so, long story short, that's how I got into architecture.
That's funny because basically what you just said describes my 12-year-old. And I have a feeling that is going to be the direction he's probably going to go into, because he's very artistic. He draws. He's very good at drawing. And he actually had mentioned at one point not too long ago that he's thinking about architecture. So
yeah, I mean, if you have a very artistic bone in your body and you're somewhat technical, I mean, it just meshes really well. People said, well, if you're good at math, you could be an architect too. But like this day and age, you don't really use a lot of math.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
like,
Hey, you must really be good at math. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah,
exactly. But the engineers are great.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be a structural engineer? Yeah, learn your math. But
makes sense.
Yeah.
And then on that note, as far as the general consensus of what the public's perception is of architects, what is that? Like, what do you think people think architects generally do? Because I think sometimes people get a little confused by what is your actual job? Are you only commercial? Do you guys work a lot in residential? I think people don't really have a very good idea
Yeah.
of what architects
You know,
actually do.
that was surprising for me when I got into architecture because I guess I thought I knew what architecture was, and I'm finding, doing this for a while, a lot of people don't.
Mhm.
They'll come to us and be like, "Oh, okay, so you build buildings." I'm like, "No, we don't build buildings. We design buildings." And so I tell people the role of an architect is like we come up with the design. So you come to us with a list of parameters and program and stuff, and we curate a design based off of those things. And then also the other big part of what we do that most people don't understand is when you go to IKEA, or if you have a Lego set, you have a manual that tells you how to build those Legos, how to build that IKEA furniture. Well, that's what we do. So we have to build a manual that tells people how to build the house or how to build a building. And so that's our role.
It's a great question because I always spot architects in pop culture, like commercials and stuff. I don't know. I see they try to portray this person as an architect where it's like a medicine commercial or like a internet commercial or something, and they're always running around. They got a hard hat on and they got a roll of drawings in one hand, and they're like telling people what to do. And it's very rare that we print any drawings anymore. And so and they're always looking at physical models, touching models, and we don't build models anymore. At least our office doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, that was the way
there's
it was.
a lot of firms some firms still do, but they're the larger firms. But
so it could be Hollywood that gives the wrong impression.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that most people think maybe we're like hidden away wearing our black turtleneck sweaters and just theorizing all day and doing those
That's
things.
right.
But we're much more practical people than I think maybe the public perception is.
Yeah, and I would say that too. The role of an architect is kind of like a project manager in the design sense or in the technical sense, because we have to know the right people to hire. Like we don't do the structure, but we hire a structural engineer that works with us and collaborates with us on the design. So we come up with the design, we're doing the drawings, but we're working with a handful of engineers. So depending on the scale of the project, we also do commercial. So we can do large scale projects that require a lot of consultants. And so we have mainly a structural engineer, and that's on all projects. And then we have an MEP engineer, which is a mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineer. And so usually you don't need that in a residential project all the time, but in commercial it's always required. And so we're collaborating with them, and we as architects have to know a little bit about everything. Okay, so because we have to be the ones that are coordinating and controlling the schedule and making sure that all the drawings get put together from all these different parties and it become a cohesive set that actually allows the contractor to build it correctly. So that's another thing that people don't realize we do as well. Not just design the pretty pictures, we also have to execute the drawings.
Yeah, and know a lot about everything, like you said, and that's important for people to know too, so they can understand what you don't just draw it and just give it to somebody else and everybody else takes care of. You have to kind of oversee what's happening and understand the whole scope.
That's right.
Yeah, people may think that we're just, like Bryson said, these creative artists or whatever, but we actually have to know a lot about each discipline. We have to know a little bit, enough to be dangerous, at least, with structural concepts and electrical concepts and plumbing and mechanical and all those different things. As one of my professors said, like, when you're the architect, sometimes you're the dumb one in the room, which he kind of said that tongue in cheek, but what he was meaning was that we have specialists that are experts at everything, but we have to know a little bit about the whole picture. So
that's right.
Good. Well, we can revert back to something that you said a few minutes ago about not necessarily using paper anymore, and everything is kind of into that digital age now for everything. So in your social media, you talk a little bit about AI and what it can't do. So I want to touch on that a little bit. We can discuss about what it can't do. And then I also want to get your opinion on AI and what you think it can bring to architecture. You think it's going to hinder it? Is it helpful? What are your opinions on that?
I spend a lot of time thinking about AI and researching it. And we talk a lot about it in the office, but that video that you're referencing, I mentioned that there's 5 things, and there may be more than that, but there are 5 things that I identified that AI as of right now cannot do, and that doesn't mean that it won't in the future. But right now, there are some things that I think that safeguard our industry a little bit, and that's that it's not going to be able to seal a set of drawings. The city of Houston, city of wherever you are, if you're doing a large commercial project, is still going to require a sealed set of drawings by a real human being, and that's a good thing for now. I could see a time in the future maybe where some of these more progressive cities will accept an AI-generated set of plans and will actually let somebody build it. But right now, that's one thing. Number 2, it can't build. I mean, it's kind of goes without saying that AI can't build, but I don't see job sites walking around with a bunch of robots right now building homes. Although, there's companies like Icon that are building like 3D printed buildings, so that's, I guess, a form of AI. But but majority of buildings are still built by human beings, and it's important to understand the details of how everything comes together. It can't be human. I think to myself, do we want a world where you're not interacting with other people? I think there's a profound joy.
Yeah, the human connection is important for a lot of people, and especially in something like building construction, whether it be a commercial or definitely residential. People tend to build relationships with people.
Yeah.
Right, and so that completely eliminates that part of it.
That interaction is so valuable to me, and it makes it special. AI is not going to be able to sit down and listen to a client as well as I can. I mean, I've heard that coding is the new typing, so they're teaching kids how to code in school now, whereas they used to teach them how to type, and soon it's going to be about prompt writing, so writing prompts to generate things with AI. But I don't know if anybody's ever used ChatGPT out there, but you kind of have to be pretty skilled at describing what you want to get the result that you want. And I just imagine somebody sitting down and trying to prompt AI to give them this perfect design, and how frustrating that process would be. So it's the ability to listen is one of the most important skills that an architect brings to the table. To be able to listen to a client and understand, their design style is actually not the Pinterest board that they sent me. It's actually something else, the way that they describe it. And that's very critical.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we'll be talking with clients and they're explaining things and they're like, I want it this way. And the further we continue to talk with them, we realize, well, actually, that's not exactly what you want. And I don't think an AI would be able to pick that up, because right now it's like, if I just type what you want, it's going to spit out what you tell me. But the ability to read like body language and is something that's pretty important. I mean, a lot of times it's husband and wife, or and we are having to like I don't know, counsel a little
referee.
bit. Referee a little bit. And so
personal foul.
One is saying one thing, one's saying another thing, and we have to be the ones to kind of figure out what's the best solution.
Yeah.
And voice our opinion, because sometimes maybe the husband's right and sometimes the wife's right, and so like if we can come into that conversation and say, well, she's making valid points and this is why, and maybe she wasn't able to communicate that in a proper way that he was able to realize it. So sometimes that helps, and I don't think that AI is able to do that, at least at this point. So
yeah, I would agree with all of that. And AI, what it does generally, in a general sense, is that it's taking the information that's on the internet and homogenizing it into what it thinks you're trying to get, and giving you images, maybe even some plans that are out there, that are softwares that are out there that can generate plans. But it's not really providing innovative solutions with using thinking and coming up with new ideas. And then the other thing that we have to consider is things like budgets and code and that sort of thing. And I see a lot of amazing renderings that AI is able to generate, but does it know the needs and the wants of the client and the parameters, and will that pretty rendering fit into the budget, and how does that transfer to the plan? And so there's all kinds of considerations. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about it and maybe obsessing over it sometimes when I'm talking to my wife late at night. But I think there's a lot of fear and trepidation out there within the design community, and I think rightfully so. But I think there are some things that will still safeguard what we do.
Yeah. I mean, right now, you still have to be able to think. So when we utilize AI, there's several programs out there, but there's a few that we've used in-house that we're starting to find ways to use it in our process. And it's that you still have to think about the plan, right? You still have to provide AI a plan. AI can't generate a plan. And we've gone down deep rabbit holes, and there are companies out there trying where you could type in, I want a 4-bedroom house with this many bedrooms, and it spits out a plan, but it's terrible. And it's just terrible. It can't do it. And you're looking, it's like, well, it did what I asked, but it
Didn't do it well.
It didn't do it well.
Yeah.
And, because when we design a plan, we take a client's parameters, and we come up with a plan that is cohesive, that works, and it's a reflection on the way that they live, not a reflection on, I want these many bedrooms, this many bathrooms. It's like, we're going deep into
It's not a checklist.
Yeah, it's not a checklist. It's like
Mhm.
we're trying to curate a space that is based off of how they actually live in the house while still meeting those program requirements.
I think that AI kind of falls into the category like all other technology. It is a tool to be used by the professional,
Yeah.
right? But maybe is not a replacement of the professional.
That's
So
right.
I think that it could replace the architects who refuse to embrace it, but it won't replace the architects who use it well.
Yeah.
And so there's plenty of people out there probably still drawing by hand, but with the technology that we have, we can run laps around them in terms of our deliverables, our what we can deliver to the client. And so I think it's a tool that we should implement in our design process for sure, and just see how we can leverage it for that.
I mean, I think the one thing we had an intern that we then hired. His thesis was about AI and how it is working, like how it is being utilized in the industry.
Yeah.
And he had this one chart that basically said that like AI will take away those mundane tasks, right? So you get to focus more on the creative and the thinking aspect of things, and allow AI to do the things that is just trivial, that takes up a ton of time, but ultimately is not something that you need to use a lot of brain cells for. And so it allows us to be a better architect, a better, provide a better service to the client, because we're able to really dive into the details that maybe we don't always have the time for.
It'll give us a lot of time back, which will save clients a lot of time and even money, when it comes to hours spent. But it should give us back that ability to really conceptualize and iterate many options instead of having to focus on just one thing. You can quickly generate ideas that can help see what the options are.
Yeah, so
like on
that, when we design, we do multiple options, and we end up showing the client maybe one or two. Okay, but behind the scenes, we've done like 20. Where we're looking at different ways that this could look, different iterations, and a lot of that takes time. And so what we've been able to leverage AI for is to just spark ideas. We're able to throw some sketches in, and it'll spit out some ideas that has really helped us kind of be like, oh, okay, I like the way that this did this. Let's take pieces of this and actually put it in and save us that long time of doing 20 options. Maybe we only do 4, right? And that's because we've been able to quickly generate some concepts. Although they come out great, we can't show those to the client, because then they would be like, oh, I love this. But it'd be like, you can't afford this. So that's where Garrett goes and says, like, it's a tool for the professional, because we as the professional can determine what can we pull out of this and actually generate something that is feasible
right for them.
and right for the company. Yeah, exactly. So
cost effective. Yeah.
I mean, we've been able to implement it, and it has been cool. But we're treading lightly.
Treading lightly. And I think that's 100% true about the fear some people have. And I think that's in most every industry when it comes to AI. People are concerned that, it's just going to take over the world and, replace jobs. But you're right. There's some, like a doctor, right? AI cannot replace a doctor, a surgeon. It's going to definitely be a tool to maybe help them with surgeries and things like that. So I completely understand that point about, you still have to have the human there doing the work.
I mean, yeah, it would help a doctor with diagnosing, right? As a double check for us, I think a benefit that I'm looking forward to with AI is having a code expert in the room. So for us, code is pretty black and white. It's in a book. You pull it up and you can read it, right? And it's, something that is very boring. But, the way that code is written is you have to jump around. I mean, like you read one passage and it says reference this code. So you like flip through it and you read that and it says reference this code. I mean, when we're reading code on these larger projects, I mean, it takes us a long time to like get it down. And so having a code expert in the room when we're meeting with a client and they're like, I want to do this. And, if we had some sort of virtual assistant that we could be like, hey, is that feasible? And they instantly know because they know the code inside out. That is something that would be a dramatic improvement.
I mean, I think that there's a certain market sector of a client that will always want to self-perform things. We've all had clients that come to us with plans, or they come to us with preconceived ideas. There's a percentage of people out there who are going to utilize AI and they're going to self-perform things. Just like if I knew a lot about cars, I might not take my car to the mechanic. I'll just fix it myself, right? So there's a certain percentage that will do that and they'll do that with AI. But there's a lot of people out there that they really value their time. These higher level professionals that maybe they don't have a lot of time. Maybe they're running another business or something. They don't have a lot of time to sit there and describe to AI their perfect home. They want to hire a professional, and there's value in there. They know that there is tremendous value in their time not spent on those things and just trusting somebody who knows the business.
So speaking of time, if I was looking to build a home and I wanted to come to you for, say, not an extravagant, huge home, maybe 3,500 square foot home, just to give people an idea, as far as, working with an architect, what is the general timeline that people can expect if everything goes smoothly, relatively smoothly? I'm sure there's changes that happen in between, but I'm curious, and I'm sure people are curious too, from that first meeting that you guys have to they actually can start building. Like, what is the general timeline for something like that?
It depends. There's a lot of parameter. There's a lot of things that go into that, like what style of house, what level of quality they want. For the most part, if I said like a typical scenario, you came to us in the quality that we expect as far as what we put out there, I would say a design could take 6 months.
Okay.
Okay. And so that could be shocking to some people because there are home designers out there that can spit plans out like that. But that's not what we do. We really take the time to meet with the client and find out exactly what they want. I mean, we can get a floor plan sketch pretty quickly, but it's the evolution of the house. Like we meet with the client on every room. So like we'll have a meeting and say, we're going to go over the living room and we're going to talk about the living room, the way you want it, all of these things. And it could be like an hour to 2 hour long meeting just to go over the living room and then do the same thing with the kitchen and because there's so many details that you have to think about, like what type of pools do you have on your kitchen cabinet? What kind of cabinets do you want? What style of face do you want? What colors do you want? I mean, it's like endless. The list goes on and it can be very overwhelming for a client. So we like to break it up into pieces. And all the time that we're doing that, we're updating the drawings. So the drawings are progressing at the same time. And so I would say a set of drawings for a 3,500 square foot house from meeting to ready to be permitted would be about 6 months.
Yeah, and the schematic portion of that, so they can understand, okay, this is what the house is going to kind of look like. The schematic portion of that is probably the first 2 months of that. So then we spend another maybe 3 to 4 months drawing. And our philosophy is we want to capture everything that's going into the project. We're taking all that data and putting it on the drawings so that when the contractor goes to build, there's not any guesswork. The contractor is not going to the client and saying, what color is the guest bedroom and that sort of thing. So all of that stuff is selected beforehand and put on the drawings. And that's why it takes that much time, is because it's extremely detailed set of plans. It's not a builder set. It's not, our sets of drawings are probably 50 to 100 sheets or more, depending on the size of the house. So it's not a quote unquote builder set, right?
Yeah.
It's like 10 pages.
Yeah.
You could go buy a set of plans online. Those are our favorite to see when a client walks in with those, buying a plan online and coming to us and saying, can you tweak this or that? And, what we're looking for is somebody who really trusts us. And I like to tell people we're kind of like a scratch kitchen in that analogy with a restaurant. We're not taking things that are out of the freezer and popping them in the microwave. We're, taking raw ingredients and creating something that's one of a kind. And if I were in the market for a suit, I could go to JCPenney and buy one that's off the rack and not do anything, or I could go, spend a lot more and have something that can last for a long time and is custom to me. It fits me.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do with architecture.
Yeah. You have a lot of good analogies. I like it.
Yeah. And I would say that would be the ideal client. And
Okay.
so like the client that I would say is maybe not the ideal client for an architect is, especially for us, is one that knows what they like, knows exactly what they want, and they just need us to draw it.
Yeah.
We're not drafters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we get is like, well, what if I just bought a set of plans online and I came to you and had you to make tweaks, right? Well, number one, why are you buying plans online? You don't even know if it's going to work for the site, because every house, every site is different. Every neighborhood has different deed restrictions that require certain materials. So you may say like, I found this house online and it's perfect, because you want this coastal vibe, but you're in a neighborhood that requires 50% masonry. And that happens all the time, or they have like roof pitch requirements. And so like all of these things are taken into consideration. And so that's why buying plans online is probably the worst idea. I know you spent like $500 on them and you want us to tweak them. Will that save you some money if I just bought you these plans? I'm like, absolute. I said, based on our experience, because when we first started, we had some clients that did that and we went through that process. You end up spending more money with us with a pre-bought plan. And the analogy that I will give is like playing Tetris. Okay. So like your house is a bunch of pieces, right? You've got kitchen and dining, and those are all pieces that are falling into place. And as you're playing the game, you are manually moving those pieces to fit them into place, right? And that's the analogy of a pre-bought plan. And now you come to me and you say, well, just tweak this piece. Well, when you do that, what you just did does not work. So you have to reevaluate, and then it's like
it shifts the whole
shifts the whole thing, and now the thing doesn't fit. Okay, so if you give me a pre-bought plan and now I have to move, I want the dining room to be over here. Well, if I do that, now the look and love of this plan that you like does not work. And so that goes back to curating the space the way that you live and starting from scratch. So if you come to us with plans and we're like, oh, that's great. It gives us an idea of what you were trying to achieve, but we're going to take a fresh stab, because ultimately we will present something that you probably didn't even think was possible, right? Because again, we do this day in and day out. So it's something that just is ingrained in us. And a lot of times we can just take the pieces and put them in the right spot.
Yeah,
and
I think just the number one quality we're looking for in all of our clients is just simply trust. The biggest red flag that we get with new clients is falling into this trap of, I've got this preconceived idea. I stayed up late and I did all these sketches and stuff. And inevitably, whenever we show them our first pass, if it's nothing like their sketch, we can sense the disappointment, because it's like, I showed you, kind of what I wanted. And if you want a service provider who will just take what you want and draft it, that there are people out there that do that. But if you're going to an architect that has a great reputation and portfolio, just trust them. As long as you can get your design style kind of nailed down and what the expectation is in terms of aesthetics, then let the architect do what they're trained to do, and that takes into consideration the site, the orientation, the terrain, topography, weather, all these different things go into making a home.
And that's another thing that I think a lot of people don't think about or understand, what's involved with being able to place a certain structure on a certain place. So that's a good point that you made about that, so people can understand a little bit more that it's more than just, this is what I want, just put it on this lot. It doesn't work like that.
That's right. And when we're doing the plans, we're taking into consideration everything, like the way the front of the house may look as we're doing these things. It's not, the way that we work is inside out. We don't start with a style and the way the front needs to look, right? Because you spend most of your time inside the house. So the most important thing is the way the space is and how it flows, because that's how you live. You don't live outside. So, and we feel like we have the ability to take whatever plan we curate and create an exterior that matches the style that you want. And then that may result in some push and pulls of the plan a little bit, but ultimately you start with the plan. That's the most important thing. A client that is coming to you with a plan, sometimes they get really set on their plan. It's hard for them to let go of that. And so if you could, like, to Garrett's point, it's like, just come with an open mind, if you come to us with requirements of like how you want your spaces to feel and all this other stuff, and we provide a plan that does exactly that, why would you want to stick with your plan?
Yeah.
Other than it's just a connection to it, emotional connection.
So we talked about the ideal client. You talked a little bit about something that you necessarily wouldn't want, but what would you consider your nightmare client? Have you had any?
Yeah,
Yes,
we've had some nightmares. Yeah. And it usually starts with them coming
with pre-bought plans.
With pre-bought plans.
As we just talked about.
We had one client one time. They came in and they had drawn their house plan in the game Sims, the computer game Sims.
That's interesting.
Yes, it was. It was interesting. And I've had plans drawn in Excel.
Yeah,
I didn't know you could do that.
No, I couldn't.
The fill tool.
Each box was a wall.
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, it's crazy, but I guess the nightmare client is an indecisive client, someone that is not trust.
Yeah, they do not trust you.
Like,
they questioning your fees right off the bat. It's a red flag. They tell you, I can get this done much cheaper than what you're quoting me. I would say, well, I wish you the best, and go do that.
Well, and I mean, like, we do run into clients that, and there's a lot out there, and we've realized this, that they just don't know what an architect cost. And so when they see things, it's like, oh, so I mean, questioning the fee is not bad, but understanding the value is the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so
that's true.
I mean, it doesn't hurt our feelings if someone is like, whoa, I didn't know that an architect costs this. It's like, well, yes, well, now you do. And so
I think the nightmare client is one who knows what an architect can cost, but they are trying to knock your fee or threaten you with, I'm going to go somewhere else, or I can get this done cheaper, and that sort of thing. Not understanding the value or respecting what you're worth, I think, is what I was saying there. Yeah. But not trusting, can't make up their mind, hires the cheapest builder possible, or I'm going to do it myself. That's also a nightmare scenario. Oh, I think I can build this thing myself.
Well, and we have a questionnaire that we send a client right when they reach out to us, and one of the questions is like, what is the question? It's like, what are you?
The question is, what is your plan for a builder? And the options are, I already have a builder on board. I'm going to bid the project and find the most qualified builder, or I'm going to build it myself. I enjoy being stressed out.
You start off, I enjoy being stressed out. I'm going to build it myself.
Yeah.
And that's clever.
Yeah. I think we've gotten a couple of
We have gotten a
and
few
they
of those.
actually honestly answer it.
They do. They do. I enjoy it.
I enjoy stress. And
sign me up.
Yeah. And so, so we get those. And when we do, we just like fill them out, and we're just like, look, I don't know if you've never built a house, I don't think you understand what goes into that.
Yeah. I was on the phone the other day with a lady. She had found us, and this builder that she has, she says he's an electrician and he's going to build the whole house. I'm like, okay. And he's telling her, you need plans to go for permit. And I'm trying to describe what we do and the design process, all the things that we've already talked about on this show. She just kind of flies by all that and says, okay, but when can I go to permit? And I'm like, well, it's a process. There's a long way to go before we even get there. And she was so hung up on, how fast can I move? How fast can I go? Yeah. And that was a huge red flag. And probably not going to work out.
No.
Probably unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, unrealistic expectations.
So, she probably had somebody telling her he can get it built for her really quickly, and she was, that's not good. That's never good.
Unrealistic expectations is another red flag for us. I mean, in the questionnaire, we've learned to do this because we've had several meetings with clients that we would spend time and then it go nowhere because it wasn't non-realistic. And so one of the questions is, how big is the house and how much is your budget? And some people are like, don't want to it's like they're afraid to show us their cards because it means that we're going to cost more. Our fee is set based off how much time it's going to take us, not based off of how much money you have. And so for us, we're like, well, what's your budget? And so they tell us, and we're like, okay, look, you want a 3,500 square foot house and you only have $200,000? Doesn't compute these days. I mean, like we try to educate them at that point. It's like, look, a house that is of what you're describing in this size is going to be X. And they usually will go away if they don't have that kind of money. And so unfortunately, but we try to like educate them because I mean, out there, you can go to the suburbs and buy a home that is really affordable. But the problem with the suburbs is they buy in bulk and they're just, they have like a handful of plans that they have in certain suburban neighborhoods, like mass development neighborhoods. And so, and then they're massaging the colors on the outside. And what that allows the builder to do is buy in large quantities, and his framers are getting paid per house. And usually they frame an entire house in 3 days. And so, it's crazy, but they're not having to think. They're not looking at plans, right? They've already framed this house 3 other times,
or more,
or more a couple weeks ago. So they're just putting these things out, and they're also not always the best quality. Like they're cutting corners. I go to these suburban neighborhoods, and it makes me cringe when I see the build quality. Like they're using chipboard for the sheathing, which should be a crime, and not using actual sheathing like is plywood or zip or OSB. Any one of those would have been 10 times better what they're using. Yeah, so it's about quality, and that's why they can get it cheaper. So when they go and they're like, oh, I'm going to build my own house, it's like, well, look, it's a one of one. You're not buying in bulk, and a contractor is having to buy subs or hire subs that are more sophisticated that actually look at drawings, which increases your price. And so, yeah.
And that's why I want people to know too, the what you guys as architects bring to a project, and that's why I always like to tell people all of this information too. So if they're going to hire an architect, they need to understand, what you guys bring to the table and how it's important for them to understand those things.
That's right.
Well, another thing that we're looking for, and it's kind of a red flag in the design process, and this is one of the videos on our social media. So we talk about the word resale, and how if a client is talking about resale value in the design process, I have to almost stop and tell them, like, don't design this house for the next owner, design this house for you.
It's funny that you bring that up, because that was another one of the things I was going to talk and ask you about too, because I was like, oh, that resale value word makes me cringe. As somebody that does remodels and kitchens and bathrooms, that comes up a lot too.
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing this? Like, should I be spending this much? I'm like, if it's in your budget and you're going to live in this house for X amount of years still, make it how you want it and enjoy it. And exactly what you said. Don't think about necessarily the next person. Just design it for yourself at the moment.
Well, what I tell people is, if you're taking the time and the money to hire a design professional, it's going to be a quality design, and quality design will always sell, no matter what the market is. If you've got a better design space or home, it's going to sell over the one that's down the road that looks like crap. So it's resale is one of those things that we try to avoid at all costs. That conversation.
No, that makes total sense. And I wanted to get in a little bit about your projects. And when we met last time, you guys talked about you have done some churches, and I'm curious about, how did that happen? Like, how did you get into building churches?
That's a great question. It definitely was not a market that we tried to target when we started our company. We come from a commercial background doing retail, office, mixed use, kind of lifestyle designs. And we wanted to get into residential. And so we started doing homes right off the bat. But in college, he had worked as a landscape draftsman. There was a landscape contractor that would use his plans a lot, that knew him. He happens to be a pastor of a church on the east side of town, and
just reached out to me and it's like, hey, can you come look at my church and provide a renovation? And so we went out there, met him, and just did a renovation. But then my wife and I served on the youth staff of the church that we attend, and there was a guest visiting minister who was there right after we started our business, 2018, summer of 2018. He
was telling us about this land that he had bought for this church that he wants to build in Georgia. And I was kind of in this hospitality room, like making sure he was comfortable and everything. I gave him my card. I said, hey, look, I'm an architect. I just started my firm. I've never done a church. But, I'd appreciate an opportunity. And to his credit, he was like, I'll give you a seat at the table. And so fast forward a year later, he bought a old school and gym facility, and he came back to me and he said, hey, would you be willing to do this design for us? And I said, sure. And so that was our first project that actually got built, and that was in Georgia. Our church projects kind of get us all over the country because it's such a word of mouth network between churches and pastors. One person has a friend in Indiana, and they recommend us, and so it's a very tight knit community. So we're licensed in Texas, Florida, Georgia, Missouri, Indiana.
Wow.
So we're licensed kind of all over the place, and that's all from the church market.
And how many churches have you built so far?
We've got one renovation under construction here in Houston, one that was completed in Georgia, one in Gainesville, Florida, big renovation there. And I'm about to start a fourth renovation in Indianapolis, just outside of Indianapolis. So it's really exciting. We've done a lot of designs for churches. One of the challenges in that market is it's kind of like a publicly funded project because they're getting their money from the people who go to the church and stuff. So designing and conceptualizing is very fun and energizing for them. Where the bottleneck is okay, now we have to go build this thing and raise the capital and that sort of thing. So that's the biggest challenge for the church market.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very different from all the other projects that you work on.
Well, it's like the church, we've come to really like the church market because it's like a blend of residential and commercial.
Yeah.
And so the thing, it's been surprisingly a market that we've really enjoyed, because the pastor is and everyone in the congregation is emotionally connected to the space. Okay. In a commercial sense, it's all about return on investment. And so it's very fast paced. It's what's the cheapest. And so sometimes there's a lot of things that are cut out of the design in the end. But in residential, we find that the budgets tend to go up, and that's because people are emotionally connected. They're like, oh, I really love this. And it's like, well, it's outside your budget. And they're like, well, I can just squeeze a little bit more. And you're like, okay, let's do it. And so a church is very similar, but it's taking both of those.
They want high quality design because, in a very practical, kind of almost business-like manner or way of thinking about it, they're competing for families and for people. And so if you go into a church lobby and it feels like the 90s, that turns people off, so they want their space to feel current. They want it to feel inviting and feel like home for people. And that's why they want that higher level of design. So we've really enjoyed it.
That's good. And that's, again, that personal, emotional connection that you make with people. I'm sure, like you said, you can really connect there with the church.
Definitely.
So getting back to production, we talked a little bit about your social media. And of course, we have social media. How do you feel the importance is when it comes to production and getting your name out there? I think for me, I feel like social media is where it's at right now, right? Do you guys feel the same way? Do you guys feel like you get a lot of traction on your social media from what you guys post?
We do, yeah. I think I started the social media when we started our company, and so I've done it from the beginning, and now we hired somebody that helps us with that. But I try to think, why is somebody following me? If they're following me as an architect, they want to see my work, they want to see our design concepts. So I'm not oversharing a ton of things about who we're hiring, and nobody cares like who got a promotion in the office. So I see a lot of other design firms out there that's almost all they post is things about, oh, this person had an anniversary and this person got hired and whatever. But I want to keep it about the content, and I want to keep it about the work. And to me, I would almost rather not post anything than post something that doesn't look good or represent what we want. And so it's all about making sure that what we share is the highest quality, and just want it to look and feel the best.
Well, and then we've also realized that there's a clear distinction on what type of work we get from social media versus other platforms. And so like residential is hot in social media. and the commercial jobs that we get, I don't think we get any from Instagram or anything like that.
Yeah, maybe a very small percentage, and that's because that commercial community in Houston is very word of mouth. Is almost like the church market we talked about, but residentially, it's very important, and I see it as an avenue, as a means to educate people. And I'm not trying to hold my information close to the vest, and I'm smarter than everyone else, and you need to hire me to find out. No, I'm trying to share everything that I have. I want to share the knowledge that we have. And if we can educate people and serve the community, then it'll make everybody better. Just like this podcast.
That's great. And that's why I do this too. And that's why I bring professionals on here to educate people about certain things that they wouldn't necessarily know about before. So I appreciate you guys coming and joining me, and hopefully we can do this again.
Maybe
after the holidays. I know everybody's so busy right now, but thank you guys so much for this, and I appreciate it so much. And stay tuned for the next one. Thank you guys. It was a pleasure.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Bye.